Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I often start off the show by saying I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and at this time in history, that sentiment has never been truer. We're in this together. We're facing a global pandemic that go back 3 months ago, none of us could have ever predicted. And this coronavirus is it's something else. Something that none of us in our lifetime have ever faced on this scale. And so I do sincerely hope that wherever you are, that you are healthy and that you are safe, and that you are being able to step out the instructions that your local authorities are providing you. We'll talk a bit more about coronavirus in a second. I do want to let you know today's show we are going to be having a wonderful guest, someone who I've thought of having on the show and inviting onto the show for a little while now, and the opportunity came for me to invite her to join us. Dawna Thomas is her name. Now, if you have been a part of our Facebook group, Voice Essentials, the Voice Essentials Community Facebook group, then you will know Dawna Thomas's name. If not, you're going to get to meet her in person in a second. But if you have been a part of the Facebook group, then you have been treated to her feedback on a lot of people's videos and questions. It truly has been outstanding and so thorough at times that I wanted you all to have an opportunity to put a face to a name, and so we're going to get to meet her in a second, which I'm really looking forward to. But before we do, let's just briefly talk about this coronavirus thing. Firstly, to all of my singing teacher colleagues, and there are many of you who watch this show not only as a replay, but also live. And hello to everyone who's watching the show live. Hello to everyone who's watching the show as a replay. I've lost my train of thought. So shout out to all my singing teachers. I know that many singing teachers right now are understandably concerned, and for some that's putting it lightly, around coronavirus, in part because this is not only a threat to our general well-being, our health, more so for the elderly and those who have compromised immune systems, but more importantly, it's also a threat to people's livelihoods. And so there is a lot of concern out in the wider singing teaching world, as well as the world as a whole, around this whole thing. And I want to say that I really I'm with you. We all are in this together, and I've been starting to have conversations with my students about how do we proceed over the next coming weeks and months. Here in Australia, I think it's generally accepted that we're a couple of weeks behind the Northern Hemisphere in the development of the way this is rolling out, simply because we're an island, and so in one sense that's protected us, and we're kind of a long way away from the rest of you, so it's taken a little bit longer to get to our shores. Sadly, it has made its way here, and so we're kind of, our government has just yesterday declared that we're no longer allowed to congregate in groups of more than 500, and I think over the coming weeks, coming days, this is evolving rapidly. In the coming days, we are likely to see those sorts of implications and instructions ramp up. Certainly the rhetoric would suggest that. But in the meantime, we do have to observe really high levels of hygiene. We kind of, in a funny kind of way, we kind of have to do what we should have always been doing, with our hygiene. We do need to wash our hands, spend 20 seconds foaming up and really making sure that our hands are clean. Try to reduce the way we touch our face. I heard one statistic about how many times we touch our face, and it's actually that transference of our hands to our mouth and our nostrils that give the coronavirus the opportunity to get into our lungs, and it's our lungs that it wants to attack. And so we do have to be vigilant around those things. Certainly in my studio, and I've already spoken to a number of singing teachers from across Australia who are being really attentive to how they're creating cleanliness in their studio around spaces and surfaces and cleaning microphones, and again, kind of doing what we should already be doing. I clean my mics regularly, and but I'm going to be cleaning them even more regularly now, and so that's really important. Of course, some of us, you may even be watching the show right now and thinking to yourself, well, wow, I'm stuck at home. I've been quarantined for 14 days, and so you can't get to your singing lesson or your singing teacher. You can't get out. And so I want to encourage you, if that is you, ask your singing teacher about online lessons. A lot of singing teachers are moving to an online delivery if necessary. I'm quite fortunate in one sense, in the sense that I teach people. I've been teaching online for 10 years, and so this is by no means new to me. I'm online all the time. Here we are. I was teaching someone from the United Kingdom, from Britain this morning, and I'll teach someone from America tomorrow and someone in Hobart on Wednesday. So teaching online is a very normal process for me. But even for those students who it's not a normal process for, so my students who spend the time here in the studio, I'm already having those conversations with my students that if, and hopefully it remains an if we need to move onto an online process, that we can do so easily. And I encourage you to have that conversation with your students, or if you're a student, with your teacher. Do you know, in part because I want you to continue having your lessons. I want you to continue to sing because your singing teacher needs the income. And so, you know, not to mention the fact that your singing is great for your immune system. It's been shown to be really good for your immune system. It's great for brain activity. So, you know, if you're sitting at home bored, there's more. You don't have to just watch Netflix. You can do a whole range of other things, including your singing, and it's great for your mental health because it releases wonderful amounts of endorphins. And so singing, look, it's by no means the silver bullet. We all know that it's not going to cure us from said virus, but it is going to go a long way to helping us ride this out. And I want you to take advantage of that as people who already love their singing. So there you go. Make sure you are good with your hygiene. Make sure you're having your online singing lessons if necessary, or continuing with your singing lessons. And of course, if you're not already having singing lessons, you can take advantage of my online course. You can see it down here. It's a 10-module course. It really generally takes one module per week to complete, but you might like to, you know, smash it out. Equally, you can take a part of that and you can, you know, keep yourself busy, keep yourself active, and keep your voice active. Really important over the coming weeks and months, and we will get through this together. You know, we often talk about the fact that we're in a global community. Has it ever been truer than now? This is really, this virus is no respecter of person, age. You know, well, it is kind of a respecter of age, I guess, sadly, but it's certainly of race, you know, genealogy. We are in this together, and so my greatest, best wishes, prayers, and thoughts to you all as we confront it. So we're going to jump into having our live guest because I am super keen. I am super keen to introduce you to her, and that's what we are going to do right after this.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Hello, Dawna. How are you?
Hey, hello. I'm so excited to be live with you.
It is so good to have you. So good to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
What an incredible honor. Thank you.
Oh, that's very kind. You, we probably should, for those people who are not a part of the Facebook group, and why not, let's introduce people to you and tell them a bit more about who Dawna Thomas is and how she comes to be on this little live YouTube hangout.
Oh, great. Okay, well, first of all, I'm fabulous. And no, I'm just kidding. First of all, I wanted to just start by saying that I found you when I was trying to convert from being a classical teacher. I've been a classical teacher almost 30 years.
Wow.
And yes, and so I started seeing that there was definitely some problems. I'm a Christian contemporary singer myself, but when I was teaching in studio, I noticed that there were some things that seemed to kind of not make a good connection. And then I was hired at Atlanta Institute of Music and Media. Hello, AIM Life people. And we had such a wonderful time starting a vocal program there. But they said, well, you're a voice teacher. Of course, you can teach voice. And I said, yeah, but we're singing rock and roll, and you don't do that the same way. I remember the first week they were like, we do Crossroads. You know, I walk down to the crossroads. I was like, that is not part of that's not part of the program from Kennesaw State that I was working on. And then they said, and could you demo Barracuda for us? And I thought, oh my Lord, trying to teach the girls how to make sure that they didn't hurt themselves when they got into their belt at the top, and I was thinking, how do I work this out? So I actually went and started perusing different things. I attended Shenandoah's Contemporary Commercial Music Institute, which for anyone who's looking for a connection there, definitely some singers are hitting that place.
Yeah,
and a lot of teachers.
Yes.
Fantastic program.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually I saw your videos, and I was pointing my students from AIM to Dr. Dan Voice Essentials as part of their homework.
Oh, wow.
And yes. And I said, now we'd have our class, and then I'd say, okay, so some supplementary things, go look at this exercise, see what you think, if this is work for you, especially for males. And I thought that was really powerful. And then I saw you having a conversation with someone. When I was researching was Matt Edwards for the CCM.
Yep.
And bringing that back around full circle, I was like, well, if he's good enough for Dr. Dan, then I got to go there. And that was pretty exciting for me to meet so many fantastic people and start this process of what we call cross training. So you can do opera, or you can do your worship music, your Christian contemporary, or pop music, rock and roll, or even your Zen screaming.
Zen of scream, yep.
Right. So that's a little bit about how I came to be on your show. You invited me into your Voice Essentials community. And I'm, a child of a family in music, but my dad was also in ministry, even though he was an orchestra conductor. So we didn't have money for me to have private lessons. Right. So when I got on Voice Essentials, I thought, this is my branding too for my vocal studio, which is, giving voice. Yeah. And I love the idea that I could say, listen, if I know something and it can help you and you're looking for resources, I want to leave a breadcrumb trail for those in the community to say, hey, let's share ideas. Let's share things that might work for you. And let's get some conversation going where people feel like this isn't an elite group just for those who have been able to do a 4-year program, or just for those who are in the know and it's kind of the secret society, and you knock 3 times and slide money under the door and then you'll get the secret tips. Instead, it's like, welcome to a community that you belong to because you're a human and you've got a voice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the short
and
and
I think
long.
that's why I resonated, you know, as I started to see your comments within the group. I really thought, yeah, this lady gets it, you know, and you know, when I first started doing YouTube, I think and I've shared this before here on the show, that, you know, I think I started a sort of a bit of a academic vigilante, you know, like, well, I'm going to show them how it should be, you know.
Right.
YouTube has a way of buffeting one, and you learn that not everyone thinks the same as you do, and you soon get told. And then over time, my approach to this, and I think this is where you and our paths have met, at the point where I had already sort of made this evolution, if you will, in my approach and attitude, is that actually it is the birthright of every human being to sing, but equally not everyone can afford to do college. They can't, whether it be time or money, they can't necessarily afford private tuition, and yet we, for the first time in history, have these wonderful platforms. In our case, we're using Facebook and YouTube to share and to disseminate really what I like to think is high quality information that people can then take and apply to their own voices. And you've really come into the community and been a very very positive voice in that space. So on behalf of the community, thank you. Because not only is your voice positive, it's wonderfully detailed. You give really thorough feedback, which is wonderfully generous, and I know the people you've been able to do that for. Because can I be honest and say, I more often than not don't have the time to do that on the Facebook group. So to see ones like yourself doing it is a real blessing to everyone in that community. Thank you for doing that. And you've got a new website that's just gone live, has it not?
Yes, we just went live tonight with a blog, and also we are in the process of starting Giving Voice, Dawna Thomas Giving Voice on YouTube, because I've had so many situations where people are asking for, there's plenty of stuff out there. You can find everything you want. We jokingly in our house call Google the source of all truth and knowledge. So you can Google anything. You know, you've got a light out in your refrigerator and you can figure out where to buy it and install it. And equally, you can find out what to do with your vocal folds. And some of it is very helpful. Some of it is, as you have said before, a little bit harmful. Yeah. And so trying to generate good conversation about what people are physically feeling. Yeah. And also knowing that we're moving into what I would consider an incredible era. There's a brand new term for people that haven't heard it. And it's only, I would say, a little bit over 10 years old that it's become something that people have heard, is vocology. You know, we've had the terms of, you know, that we used, which were classical, and we were teaching what is empirical. You would say to a student for the last 1,000 years, you would say, do you feel this? And this is what I feel. Do you feel it in your rib cage? Is this the feeling in your mouth? And now we're working on science-based, healthy vocal habitation. So there are a number of things that we said for years, like that we need to keep a scarf on, that would actually change the temperature of the vocal folds, which I'm sorry if you're crying right now, but it doesn't. And then other things like we need to drink our tea. I'm sorry, tea doesn't touch your vocal folds either. So
that's
you know, we do
technically known
things
as drowning.
Right. That's not a good thing if they get to your vocal folds. But in fact, we know that there are things that we feel good about. Some of them are comfort measures, and some of them are in fact helping with swelling in the pharynx, but the vocal folds, no. But it's interesting now that we get to have these kinds of fantastic resources with online learning and also science, so that we're not just guessing anymore or passing around are urban legends, or wives' tales, things that your mother told you that you would catch a cold or wouldn't sing well. And I think it's really exciting time to be a part of that and be researching these kinds of things and sharing this sort of information.
Yeah.
So I think that, we were talking about the fact that the coronavirus is so, the fear and the panic that's going on, and how this is impacting our musicians whose gigs are being canceled right now. Voice teachers are being canceled, and people are worried about getting colds and impacting. But I just want to circle back around to that, to the fact that this is an incredible opportunity for us to be more creative than we have ever been. Including hearing stories about the fact that, different people that have been quarantined in history, that's when they wrote their greatest novel, or that's when they finished a symphony. So for some of our friends that can't go to work, you don't have a commute anymore. What are you doing with your commute time? Why aren't you on your computer, on your GarageBand? Get going. Don't waste this fabulous opportunity that you've been given, as a chance to reevaluate what you're doing with your time and your resources, and also to press in to what you can do. And the things that you can do are getting involved with spending some time on yourself, and people are using this time for meditation, or for journaling, songwriting, describing what it feels like to see the world in a different way. I don't know if you have seen some of this. There's so many things going around the internet right now that I saw a video of a place in Italy, and they were quarantined. Singing. Did you see this?
Yeah.
And they're singing. Oh my goodness. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, we can actually do programs where you can sing with people on, there's apps.
Schmill.
You can do it. Exactly. You can have a concert with people and you're not physically in the room. And we already know about Eric Whitacre. He's creating symphonies of sleep, was thousands of people singing a song that were in various countries, and all their videos are being brought together. And this is an incredible time in our history. And I would just want to encourage people with that.
Yeah, it is an incredible time in our history, and I love the positivity that you are framing it with. And a friend of the show, Michelle, I always get to her last name because it's a double. Do you know Michelle from the Speakeasy Cooperative? Anyway, Michelle posted on Facebook. She was on the show about a month ago, and she posted on Facebook.
She's wonderful.
She's wonderful.
Yeah. She's fantastic.
She posted on the show on Facebook a couple of days ago. This is an opportunity for us to all slow down, and I thought, it is. Yeah. And in our modern age, we would typically see that as a negative, but she was really framing that as a really strong positive. And I think it's going to be really important for us to look for those positive framings.
Absolutely.
And, it's
the silver linings, as people say here, looking for the silver lining.
And that's not to trivialize the difficulties that
not at all.
Most of us are going to face financially and physically over the coming weeks and months.
It's a tragedy. We're like you say, we're not in any way making it seem like, well, in this tragedy, this is a great time to write a song. That's being simplistic and insensitive. But what we're saying is that this is something that is happening, that is tragical, and we do have different ways to respond to it. And we can respond to it by, just thinking about what we don't have, or we can think about what we can do. And I think that's what I'd like for us to focus on for sure.
And that's kind of a nice little segue to talk about what we were always going to talk about today.
Right.
Because coronavirus, when we first organised to do this, coronavirus wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So,
it wasn't one of our talking points. I don't remember that.
It didn't get mentioned. But we wanted to talk about, opening doors. We wanted to talk about the idea of the psychology of, and we're not
Right.
psychologists, everyone. We are not going to step
No.
outside of our scope of practice. We are singing
No,
teachers.
that'd be foolish.
It would
right?
be. But equally, both you and I, every day of our working lives, work with people's mental approaches to their
We
use
do.
of their voice. And I wanted to talk with you as you outlined some things that you wanted to talk about in processing, what are some of the things that we can do? And in fact, you said that you wrote in a note to me, there are 7 doors to approaching our voices positively. I wonder, why don't we just kick off by walking through those 7 doors as you have put it?
Sure. Well, when I first started teaching voice, I noticed that there were certain categories of exercises. And some of my mentors, I had Valerie Walters as my mentor, and she's Valerie Walters Gold now. She talked about like not trying to be in control of everything. So she would say, you want to become a little bit comfortable with your being discombobulated. And I love that term, because when you have a way of doing things where you feel good about it, but it's not working for you, it can be very hard to make progress when you're continuing to do it the way you always have. And of course, there's some catchphrases about that you can imagine. But the truth is that when you're trying to do something new, then you need to have some new techniques. And sometimes if you can think about what you're doing and maintain control, you're just sitting there doing it your same way the whole time. And so voice teachers often look for ways to kind of get you moving. So one of the things we talk about for sure is that if you've been tight in an area of your body, then you can't be tight and fluid at the same time. So sometimes we go through that process of saying, can you make a muscle and now make it fluid? And the student is doing this, and I'm saying, that's what you look like when you're singing. They're just so tight, their neck is tight, and they're trying to maintain control. They're trying to sound good. But ultimately, I think that what's going on inside of your soul and your mind, you want that to get from inside of you to out.
Yeah.
And I know for sure sometimes I'm a verbal processor, and I know for sure sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking until I hear myself say it. And I think a lot of artists are like that. They finally find the words. And I know that you've been in concerts before, or you've found someone that you're listening to, and while you're listening to them, you think, yes, that's it. That's what I wanted to say. And it's so exciting when you connect like that. And that's why we go through the process of trying to figure out how to get it from inside to outside. So in looking at how to give students not too much where they feel frustrated, but not so little that they can control it. They're doing the exercise and they can maintain control, which in a sense is counterproductive for them. Counterintuitive, but counterproductive. So having looking at more than one technical thing at a time. So I would look at what kinds of ways we could work with the fact that the mouth wasn't completely open, or that the neck was tight. And then I started thinking about this in terms of, well, if it's inside and we need to get it out, then there's these doors. And so I would put these things into the category of, an exercise that works specifically on getting the mouth open and the tongue inside. And the second door is the soft palate raises, and the tongue can be in different positions inside. But if they're both closed, my mouth is open, and then that back door there is still closed.
Yeah.
And I had a little student that I was working with, and she said, maybe the tongue, and she was a little thing, very talented, but she said, maybe the tongue is like a doormat, and maybe the uvula, which is on your soft palate, she said, maybe that's like a chandelier.
Yeah.
And I thought that was charming, because we talk about making space in the mouth so that the sound can come out. Now, clearly, we look at all kinds of different shapes for the genre of music that we are singing, but ultimately, if the door's closed, it's not going to come out. And one thing you notice with people is that the door, even when they want to communicate, sometimes the door closes because of their fear of what's going to come out. And we have body language as well, where you see that people sometimes, when you ask them a question and they know the answer, they say, oh, the answer is such and such. But if they don't know, you say, what time's the meeting? Oh, they do this. I think it's, and this is body language for, I'm not sure what the right answer is. And we say, oh, don't let it come out. And a lot of times you see with someone who's afraid that they keep their mouth tight because they're thinking, I don't want this to be heard. I'm still kind of singing, but I'm not really. So not completely committing. So the 7 doors are the mouth and just the openness of it that's appropriate for the genre, of course. And then the soft palate and the tongue. And then the throat itself, because even turning to the side, if you're doing this, you're closing the throat, or different positions. We talk about where's the body alignment, and is it beneficial for what you're doing? Because even just the just different tone, if I'm singing with my head in one position, oh, it's changing dramatically. All of a sudden you hear like, So sometimes we talk about just looking at your own video, watching yourself on your own video, becoming your own teacher, and looking at whether or not your throat is open. Then the chest can be dropping down, and your chest is actually a door that's closing. And that is a door. And then, of course, the abdominal door, when we allow the abdomen to move, then that is our final physical door. But in the last few years, I realized that so many of the physical doors were closed, such as the mouth, because the student was afraid of what was coming out. So we don't talk about the psychology. We're not psychologists as vocal coaches or teachers, but all of us that gather and discuss our vocal lessons, we say so much of it is encouraging the student to not be afraid.
Yeah.
To allow what's inside to come out, to simply be okay with the sound that they feel coming through them. I would say the majority of the students that I've worked with that are very closed, as they begin to open, it's almost like releasing a hose that's been kinked and the water's flowing. And to be honest, a lot of times when the water's flowing, the student feels so much power, but you would think they'd be like, oh, I'm free, I'm so free, oh, and instead they're like, oh my God, what was that? They're upset. Sometimes they cry. They said, that wasn't good. And I said, well, okay, well, here I am. I get paid the big bucks. My ears are located over here. And I'm telling you what came out was good. And they're thinking that wasn't good. And part of it is just because it's so overwhelming, and emotionally they're so taken aback by their own power, by their own strength, but they're not used to how it feels. They're not used to how it sounds. And we are very poor judges of how we sound. So the other 2 doors are our mental and our emotional. And emotional can be spiritual, however you want to take that for where you are in your life and your spiritual journey. But for the mental, I had a student one time and she said, I'm not supposed to do this because that's when it's bad. And I was like, you're not supposed to do what exactly? And it was just a mental picture of sound that she'd gotten from somewhere in her childhood, that she thought it wasn't supposed to be done that way, or that would make it sound bad. And it was just a improper thought about how sound production occurs. Like, for instance, someone thinking that your shoulders are not supposed to move. And we know they're not supposed to be going up and down, but then that can be translated into stiff and tight. Yeah. And in fact, the shoulders and the rib cage moves like you're flying. Oh my goodness, isn't that exciting when you find that out? You're just like, oh, I actually have movement in my shoulders and it's not wrong. Oh, that's great when that happens. And when the body doesn't feel like it's tense.
Yes.
And a lot of tension takes place when we're afraid that we're not doing a good job, or that we're afraid someone will reject us. My dad used to say that there's bop and foff. And he said, fear of failure and fear of people. Those are the 2 fears in life. And almost everything breaks down to it. So although I am not a psychologist and I don't deal with, we're not having a counseling session. That is an inappropriate place for that. But it is important for me to invite my students to spend time thinking about what they're most afraid of and how it impacts. What's the worst thing that can happen is something I say all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say, if you're going to perform this coming week, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I say, let's chase it down. Let's chase it down. What's the worst thing that can happen? And they'll say, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to throw up. And I'll say, and then what? Or they'll say, I'm afraid I'm going to fall. And I said, well, what if you did fall? Sweetheart, what if you did fall? What would you do then? Well, I'd probably get back up. What do you think people would do? Well, they'd probably laugh. I said, would you laugh? I'd probably laugh. Well, okay, then what would you do? So sometimes we chase down the fear of the what if and just ask, what's the worst thing that can happen? If someone's so afraid that they'll be rejected, then they will never give what they have to anyone else. And they'll feel like something is stagnant inside. They'll feel like they're in a box that they can't get out of. They'll feel like, that they're isolated emotionally. It's ironic that today our talking point was opening doors and everyone's inside of doors with the quarantine.
Yeah.
But there's physical quarantines and there's physical doors, and then there's mental doors, believing that you don't have something that anyone else wants, believing that if you share it, you won't get enough likes. How many likes do you need? What did you decide? If you posted a video, if 10 people didn't like it, then you must be a failure and now you're done. I mean, there's a couple of groups that are famous right now that became viral 10 years after someone posted their college video. Straight No Chaser is a group that we've seen, and they started in college. They didn't go viral for 10 years. And everybody was like, well, who are these guys? They're awesome. Sometimes we are leaving like a milestone for other people to find. It's like a time capsule. You're saying, I'm doing this. I'm not even sure who my audience is, but we have YouTube, and you don't know when it'll be found. I mean, you could be like some of the most famous people in history, that they weren't famous in their lifetime. Bach was not famous. Yeah, he wasn't famous.
100 years later.
Yeah, and meanwhile, he doesn't know that the world is still celebrating the gifts that he left behind.
Exactly.
And we have the internet. You can leave something and it's going to be there forever. And you don't know who that's going to touch, who that's going to, if you're in ministry, who they'll minister to, or who someone will say, this person, they feel like I do. They hurt like I hurt. It's one of the things about Adele when she was peddling her songs to Nashville. They didn't want her because they didn't like the sound that she had.
Yeah.
And she put her songs out there independently. And while she was going famous, she was getting the news that she was on voice rest and could not sing. And the ironic thing is that everybody's like, oh, well, that must have been an easy process. I don't think so. And we don't always get instant fame and success, but we can mean the world to one person or to a set of people, or we're leaving. And I put this in my blog. It's like leaving lanterns on people's journey with their soul. How many people have left a lantern for me and for you that was their song, Shining in the Night? And you found it and you fell in love with it and you said, this is so meaningful. How many different artists, though, in your own life have you listened to that have changed your life? Maybe you did listen to that one song over and over and over again during your breakup, but clearly in your lifetime, how many artists have there been? Can you be one of those artists for someone else and just put your song out there? Do you need to compete? Do you need to be famous, or can you just be true to yourself and give voice to what you have to say and share it with people?
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Awesome.
It is awesome. I'm really enjoying just listening. Not only to to the wonderful encouraging words you're putting out to everyone, but also to the passion with which you're delivering it, which is just wonderful. I wonder if we could talk more about that sense of internal censorship that
Yes.
so many singers have, because actually so many human beings have this sense that that they themselves do not have the right, they're not worthy, they don't stack up for whatever reason. What are some things, and again, it's important that we keep restating this, isn't it? We are not psychologists and we don't pretend to be. And there are many times in my studio, and I know there will be in yours, Dawna, that, you know, we say, look, this is not appropriate for me to be talking with you about, when discussions get to a point where it's appropriate to be handed over to a professional, licensed healthcare professional, psychologist in this particular instance. But there are times in our studios where we do talk with our students about those psychological barriers that often are deeply seated in the human being themselves. What are some of the internal censorships that you've kind of been talking to them already, but what are the main ones that you've noted with your students?
Well, I think, like you said, sometimes what I'll do is when I realize we've kind of hit on a pocket that's quite emotional for someone, I will suggest that I might wrap it up in a certain way and say, it sounds like that you're saying that this was a difficult time for you in your life, and perhaps you'll want to seek a counselor, or I might know that they have a counselor and say, the next time you see your counselor, you can talk with them about that. And that has been very helpful so that they know where the line is. And also sometimes people don't realize that they can take it to a counselor and have a wonderful, just like exploratory place. That being said, I think the average person, we're not dealing with PTSD or something. It's just a normal censorship that takes place in the body because they're not sure if it's going to work right. And this is how I describe it. All right, I need some space here. So it's like the person is getting ready to sing, and their arms, they want to just go up like this. They just want to be expressive. They feel like they want to go, oh, you know. But meanwhile, the 4-year-old in them wants to do this, but the adult person goes, you can't be acting like that, or don't draw attention to yourself, which is ironic when you're thinking, don't draw attention to yourself when you're on the stage. It's like kind of, you're working against yourself, right? So what's funny to me is when the student is standing there, I wonder if you can see me if I'm back here. The student is standing there, and then they want to do this, but instead, they send the signal to the body, move, go ahead, respond. But instead, they censor it and it goes, flap. And you just see these little flappy penguin arms, and they're unable to just say, well, just let it go. It's like their brain says, abort, bring it back in, it's getting crazy. And it's just normal. The other thing too is anybody who's ever performed on a stage, they know that they're standing there and they would normally get their hair out of their eye or, scratch their nose. Right now, don't touch your nose. It's coronavirus. People don't touch your nose. But clearly, there's things that you would normally do, but you censor it because people are watching you and you feel hyper aware of eyes on you. Yeah. And you just don't want to make a mistake. Yeah. And so being afraid of making a mistake causes you to censor your normal breathing, your normal body movements, and just being able to say, okay, number one, if you are having some emotional fear, we do have do's. And I got this years ago from my voice teacher. Again, this is one of those, just go back to it. You can't do a don't. So when you're saying don't screw up or don't make a mistake, that's not something you can actively do. So when you're performing, you're saying, do maintain flexibility, do stay fluid. It's pretty cool that you can pull a little Stevie Wonder sometimes when you're singing, when you feel like your neck is tight, or you identify a place, and someone had a comment, they said they have a place in their register where they feel their neck getting tight. I recommend you get a camera video from the side and see if you, as you're going up the scale, notice where you might start to feel that your jaw comes forward. If you notice that you're going, ah, then you'll see and hear what you are doing. And it's very hard to make videos of yourself. But if you can be brave, and please be brave, I love you already. You can do it. If you just video yourself and watch yourself and say, I'm my friend. Don't watch yourself and be a bully. Don't say things to you that I would be so upset with you if I heard you say to someone else. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because I know there's some of you that do that. So you've got to be nice to yourself. Say things like, okay, how can I help that person in that video? And what do I see them doing? And take those videos and not just sing over and over and over again. That's not really good practice. Become intentional with the way that you practice. Be thoughtful about what you see and what you're hearing and what you're putting into place from the different exercises that you have done. So if you watch something and you say, oh, I feel this tension, don't just keep singing the line. A lot of times what we do is the harder we work at something, the harder it sounds. And so it seems counterintuitive, but the higher the notes are, you feel the vocal folds coming together. You feel the pressure because they're at their longest point when you're singing your highest note. So there's lots of pressure. They're together on your highest note and long. So imagine it's almost like the sail on a boat and you're holding it to keep it from flying off. So when you feel that feeling, a lot of times people think, well, I just need to push more air. In fact, a lot of times people are blowing more air and they're blowing their folds apart. That being said, there's also the delicate balance of when you first try to do some strong singing, people say, well, I cracked. That's the worst thing that can happen. Well, actually, no, it's your body's fantastic thing that it does. The vocal folds will blow apart when they can't hold the pressure. The same way you'd let go of something before you broke your arm off. So when that happens, your body's actually getting stronger. Same way that when you're lifting weights and you start to shake, that's a sign that you're building muscle. But that's when you stop and you do some of the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises like Dr. Dan has. You sing through a straw, or you call them bubbles, where you, and we call them bibbles.
Bibbles. That is a new one for me. I've never heard the term.
No. Yours is a new one.
I beg to differ. We are nearly out of time, believe it or not.
We sure aren't. Well, it's been an exciting night.
I have really, I've sat back just loving watching and listening to. I've had this thought a number of times as we've had you on the show tonight. Well, it's not tonight here. That
tonight for me.
Tonight for you. That you know, I'm just listening to your 30 years of teaching experience, and this is what I love doing here on the show. Is that there are so many just exceptional singing teachers like yourself, Dawna, who, you know, and so many of them are not on YouTube. So many of them are not active on Facebook. You know, you don't have to be on YouTube to be a quality singing teacher. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are on the channels of the platforms that are not the quality of information that we've received from you tonight. And I haven't interjected too much tonight because I've just been, you go, girl. Like, this is good stuff. I'll just sit here.
I'm sorry. I feel like a hog.
There is no apology required.
Let's help people.
It's been so extraordinary to just listen to the quality of your information, the passion with which you've delivered it, and yeah, I've loved every moment of our hangout, and I'm sure we will have the opportunity to do it again. But we are, believe it or not, we are out of time.
We had Corona updates out the wazoo tonight. Look, everyone, you know, over the next coming couple of weeks, you know, there's just going to be
some of you, in fact, I saw one comment in the live in the live chat just earlier that someone was already camped out at home. And I think for more of us over the coming weeks, that's going to be the case.
I think so too.
Look, everyone, make singing a part of the way you pass the time. You know, see it as an opportunity to spend some time, whether it's doing practice that you've been given by a singing teacher, or whether it's simply exploring, you know, those 7 doors that Dawna's just been talking with us all, and stepping up to those doors and maybe knocking on them and seeing, you know, whether they'll open for you. And you know, a good singing teacher will often be on the other side helping you to open that door.
Yes.
Yes. But certainly I've really enjoyed tonight. Was there anything you wanted to sort of finish off with, Dawna, before we bring today to a close?
Sure. Thank you so much. I really do admire you and your work, and I felt that you offered so much integrity in your videos and your programs, and I connected to the way that you spoke to people in such a respectful way, to respect how their body worked and to respect their individuality. And so I know we definitely connect on that. So that's so precious to me. And there are so many good teachers that are out there, and they're looking for ways to share more.
Yeah.
But I just want to say to the people that are watching right now, wherever they are, whatever situation you are in, whatever time you're watching it, live or later, that your voice matters, and what you have to say is irreplaceable.
Yes.
Nobody else can say what you can say.
Yeah.
My husband has a beautiful thing that he says. You know, he says, you know, when you're standing looking at the sunset, he says that individual spot where you're standing and seeing what you're seeing in that sky, no one else can see it from just that place. So that's your one and only spot. And somebody say, did you see the sunset last night? Did you see the sunrise? And you can say, yes, but it's not the same. It is, in a cosmic sense, the same, but in another way, it's not the same from your spot. My husband and I, we say all the time, you know, God knew that from right where you were standing, and that's, you know, our level of faith. But for whoever you are and wherever you are, I just want to say your viewpoint, the way you look at the world and how you respond to it, is irreplaceable. And I hope you will give voice to that. And I hope you will look for techniques to release your own gift out into the world. And perhaps if you're like me, you won't even know what you think until you say it. And it'll be a beautiful thing. And we'll make room for you out here.
And tonight it has been a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. It's a great community. We love your Voice Essentials. Bye, guys. I love you all.
Yeah, we will see Dawna in the Facebook community page, which you can join. You know, it's open to everyone. It's not a open group in the sense that we kind of do that to mitigate the opportunity for trolls and what have you. And our moderators do keep a check on that. And so you do have to ask to join, but up front, you know, very few people are denied entry unless we are super suspicious around the behavior. But generally speaking, just jump over to Facebook, search in Voice Essentials community, and it'll come up, and we'd love to have you join. And then you'll get to interact with Dawna yourself, because, as I said, her comments, her feedback, her encouragement is just awesome. I think that brings our show to a close for today. I hope you've had a good time joining in. We do these shows every Monday, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. And it's always, it's a highlight of my week. I always etch out that time every week. I look forward to it. Next week, I've got scheduled to do a Q&A, and we almost certainly will do that. I am wondering whether, I'm half thinking, because so many of my singing teaching colleagues are starting to ask about how to conduct online lessons and what have you. I wondered whether we might use it as an opportunity to help them to see how that process goes. Also to help you to see how easy an online singing lesson process is, maybe that's what we'll do. I don't know. Linda, maybe you'll put your hand up and be my guinea pig. I'm not sure. I'm really putting Linda in the spot now. I don't know whether we'll do that or not. I'm just wanting to really help my colleagues, my fellow singing teachers, who there is a bit of concern out there, and I can really appreciate that. So even if we don't do that, sending my love to you all, and hoping the next couple of weeks, if not months, are as kind as they possibly can be for you. Leave a thumbs up on today's video. Share. Look, there is so much good information that Dawna shared with us today. It will be so encouraging to so many people. Share it. Share today's video into your social platforms and let people know about the video. Please, over the coming weeks and months, stay safe, be as hygienic as you possibly can, and I look forward to seeing you next week, when you'll always hear me wrap up a show by saying, I'm Dr. Dan, sing well.